Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Theologian's Table podcast. My name is Tim. This is the 1-year anniversary of the Theologian's Table podcast. And I'm excited. I'm excited that I get to celebrate 1 year. However, it's the 3rd anniversary of my podcasting career overall. So that's great. A few things. My wife may or may not join me depending on how things go. And my son's cat is also in heat. So you might hear her voice her opinions on how it is being in heat. So I'm going to bring some things up here. I've got the chat open. If you want to chat, you can drop a comment and I'll highlight it. And if you got any questions about, if you got any questions for me, that would be great. And I shall read them and I shall answer your questions. So I wanted to start out on a fun note. When I'm live, it's a lot different from when I'm recording, because when I'm recording, I get to edit out all my my pauses and my stuff like that, and so it's a lot different. It's a lot more cleaner when you hear my recorded podcast, and so I thought it would be fun to share some of the bloopers that I've recorded when I tried to promote this podcast and my Facebook page for it. So I've got the bloopers right here. Podcast helps explore Theologian's Table is that a lot of perspectives can be, I don't know what I'm saying. I am the host of the Theologian's Table, which is a podcast, but you don't know about that. Or a way that, God, of parts that make up the tradition. I sound like a friggin' robot. Right. So it's not easy. It's not easy to do this thing, especially for me who has had a stuttering problem and I stammer all the time, just like some presidents and former presidents. So let's, I've got another video here too. The things that I like to do a whole bunch of things. And even though it's called the Theologian's Table, I like to add everything that's important to me in life, and humor is certainly important. So I wanted to share that. But, you know, we live in an age where everything is done online, and we like to share a lot of our interests online, and we like to include our whole family in on that. And so I've got another clip here that the theology should be applicable to real life. And even though food isn't really theology related, it's part of the table, the table thing that I've got here. So I did a terrible job relating that, and there's the cat. So hey guys, this is Tim. I'm the host of the Theologian's Table podcast. So I was challenged by my friend Tom of the Tomfoolery podcast to try out this recipe that he had us do. It's called the Big Boy, and it's ramen noodles, and then it's crushed up hot buffalo wing pretzels, and then cheddar jalapeno Cheetos, and then hot sauce, and then canned chicken. And I had to cook it in vegetable broth because...
That's chicken broth.
Or chicken broth, because my gallbladder can't handle the seasoning in the ramen noodles. So, my son Ethan, he always does the food challenges in our house, so I thought
I am the rat for the time.
he's the guinea pig. So Ethan, he's gonna try it first, and he's gonna do it without hot sauce. So Ethan, go ahead. Take a big old forkful.
Forkful? What do you mean forkful? Tastes pretty good.
Alright, so now it's my turn.
Gotta
I
add
have
some hot sauce. There's probably a seal.
Hot sauce in my burrito. Alright. Getting it in there. Alright, let's get some chicken on there. Alright, here we go. It's pretty good. I don't think there's enough Cheetos in it, but who knew prison food could be this good? All right, thank you for watching our video, and
Send more weird recipes.
you can send us more weird recipes, but I also like to thank Tom of the Tomfoolery Podcast.
Bye.
Bye. All right, don't actually get lost. Please keep watching. So that's another fun thing that I like to do with my podcast YouTube channel. And if you go over to the YouTube channel, you can find a few more things like that. There's a lot more visual stuff going on related to the podcast that you can watch on there. I've got like Christian meditation videos on there and things like that. And the bloopers thing is on there too. And then when I do podcasts, especially when I do the interviews, there are there's the video portion of there. So and those are pretty much unedited too. So it's a little bit more. I guess you have that personal connection that way rather than something that's edited to be cleaner and more professional sounding. So I encourage you, if you haven't checked out the Theologian's Table podcast YouTube channel, to go over there and like and subscribe to that. And you know what's funny right now is I've got my keyboard right in front of me, and my hand automatically goes to the W and ASD keys, and then my thumb is automatically on the space bar. So I guess once a gamer, always a gamer. Let's see, I've got an alert here. Sorry, I'm reading text. Anyways, all right, so let's get to some questions that were presented to me that I can answer on air live. And the first question that was asked to me was, why did I rebrand my old podcast? So my old podcast was called Theology Taco, and it was a little bit more fun, I guess. I would always throw in sound effects. It was very quirky, and it was almost the same as this one, but I just wanted this one to be a little bit more, I don't know if authoritative is the right kind of word, but I wanted this one to serve the people of the church more than that one that one did, because in that one you had a lot more of some hot takes, but I wanted to be a little bit more, I guess, professional in this one. And I wanted to make sure that I was presenting the best research that I could possibly give to an audience who wants to learn more about the Christian faith. So that's why I rebranded. It is basically for serving opportunity, I guess, a serving purpose. And one of the things that's important to me is that with the theologian's table, I'm the theologian, but every Christian is a theologian as well, because theology it's the study of God, it's the discussion of God, and Christians do that every day, or they should anyways, and they always have to explain their faith and things like that. And so that takes, when you do that, that is theology. And then with the table, so the table metaphor or image is very hot. It's a hot or trendy, I guess, in contemporary theology. But even with that, it's an important piece of imagery, because when you think of a table, what I want you to think is people coming to the table in fellowship, and so that it's an open invite to everybody just to come sit down at the table and to break bread, and that everybody is welcome to the table. If whether you're in any Christian tradition, or if you're an atheist or an agnostic, or if you're another religion, anybody can come to that table, and we can discuss the Christian faith, and we can work through any myths or misconceptions, and we can work towards the truth. So it's very much oriented towards that. So I hope that answers that question. And don't feel free to don't forget that you can comment and I can see it. So if you have any other questions related to that, or questions related to what I'm going to talk about next, the next question was, what was my favorite topic that I've discussed? What was one that really spoke to me? That's a really good question, because I put so much work into all of them. I would say that I spend, after every episode, I immediately try to think about what the next episode should be. And it usually, I think about it and I pray about it. And usually it takes about a couple days to a week, and then I get going. I start working on that, and then some episodes I plan out ahead, and I take my time with them. But I guess my favorite one, let's see, let's look at the episode list. I should know this off the top of my head. I have two. I have episode 6, which is part of my Dark Mirror series, and that's about the end times. And it's one of the reasons is because I get to talk about Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, specifically The Next Generation. But I've also been not catching up, but rewatching Deep Space Nine, and just remembering how good of a Star Trek series that was. Especially, I'm drawn to Cisco, and like how amazing an actor that guy was, and I love that character. And then there's Kira, and then Worf is always one of my favorite, and I'm glad that he got to go over into that series. But the episode isn't about Star Trek, it's about the future, and it's about the end times. And I get to unpack a biblical eschatology, an eschatology which is the end times, that is more faithful to the vision of the New Testament versus what we've had here in the United States in the past 125 years, that revolves around dispensationalism and premillennialism. So that was probably my favorite one, and it's still something that I think about often, because it's very relevant to I don't think people understand. It's very relevant to day-to-day life, and it shapes what we do day to day, and it shapes politics. It's pretty intense. But the one that spoke to me the most was probably the one that I did in January about prophecy and politics. And that was done January 8th, right after we had all that mess at the Capitol. So that was the one that spoke to me the most, because I didn't realize how many of these um, prophecy ministries were out there trying to influence the church towards one specific candidate, and it made like Christianity almost into a state religion. And I've got a clip from that actually where I'm getting pretty feisty, because I felt like a lot of the prophecy, especially when it gets into politics, drums up fear. And I do not think fear belongs in Christianity as a motivating factor. So I'm going to play this. I'm not going to play the full clip because it's almost 4 minutes, but here it is. So they need accountability, and we need to hold them accountable for what they do, especially if they say they're representing Christ, Christian values, or the people of God. So before anyone who is a Trump supporter gets all riled up at what I have to say, this isn't really about him. What this is about a spirit of fear that has been allowed way too long in American evangelicalism. And it includes various branches of Pentecostalism and charismatics. This is a fear that promotes an us versus them mentality in Christians. It's a fear that replaces trust in God with trust in a human. It's a fear that holds up nostalgia instead of growing in sanctification. And the sanctification is supposed to be present in every part of a believer's life. It's not to be compartmentalized. And we do that so often. I do that so often. The blood of Jesus is supposed to soak everything. All right. So yeah, I got a little feisty in that episode, but that was the one that probably spoke to me the most, just because that was a crazy January, yo. So all right, I've got another question here. Let's go to that real quick. What was the one that challenged me more than I expected? They all challenge me, but the most challenging one that I did was the one where I got to admit that I had battled addiction with pornography. So that was challenging to say, because that's a very uncomfortable topic, and it was uncomfortable researching as well. It was very challenging to research, because when you research that topic, you get on this rabbit trail. And my wife and I, we co-hosted that one because I wanted her to be part of it, just because she was a very important part of my journey with that. And then she also has her master's in marriage and family studies, so she had something to bring to the table there as well. And the stuff that we researched, we always had to go back to the core of what we were presenting, because there was just so much tied into that. And it was very disturbing, some of the stuff that we came across. And so that was the most challenging one on a personal level, and just, from, I say, to way too much, but it was very just difficult to do on a research level, just because some of the stuff is disgusting. All right. But, so let's move on. This question asks, if I could have anyone come on the podcast as a guest, who would it be? There's so many people, but I think for me, um, it would probably be N.T. Wright, who's one of my favorite uh, New Testament scholars. And just because, he's English, so why wouldn't you have an English person on your podcast? Because their English accent would just class it up, like bring it to the next level just by speaking. And also because he is probably the foremost New Testament scholar alive today. And there's other great scholars too that I like one of my new favorites is Nijay Gupta, who's out of he teaches in Oregon. And then I also like Michael Bird. And then there's great Pentecostal scholars, New Testament scholars too. A lot of them are from the seminary that I just graduated. But then there's people like Mark Sharona, who is very influential in Pentecostalism, and I'd like to have him on the show too, because he goes way back, and it would be and I only have like 8 years of Pentecostal experience, and a lot of that was dismissing Pentecostalism. So those are the kind of people I would also like to have. I think it would be great to talk to someone like Beth Moore, to have her, because she's had quite the journey just in the last few years as well. And there's a lot of people that I really would like to have come on the podcast if I could get them. And I've thought about shooting them out, just by chance. This isn't a very popular podcast, but the good thing is with a lot of them, the people that I just mentioned, especially, they are really gracious with appearing on smaller podcasts. So maybe. All right. Next question. So summarize how I think the first year went. Oh boy. I think that the first year was definitely a learning curve for me. I think it went well. It started off really strong, and then I entered the final year of seminary, and things got crazy. So I wasn't able to put in as much work as I would have liked to. And so I think I wouldn't say the podcast suffered. I didn't get to fulfill the vision that I had for it in the first year. There were some surprising things that happened with the podcast. I mentioned that we did that episode on pornography. That was one where I had never planned out in advance, but I really thought that should be discussed, because I think around then, that's when all of the allegations and of Ravi Zacharias came not to light, but he was found that those things actually happened. And so I was like, well, this is not good. And I think people need to be as transparent as possible, especially if they're leaders in their ministries. And so I was like, well, I'm in school to help me become a capable minister. So let's just get that out there, and to say people who are in ministry are real people who struggle with things, but they want victory over those things. We want to be liberated from addictions. We want to show that everyone struggles, and that even though they're not easy, we don't want to make it look like we're untouchable or anything like that, because that's not true. And to have that attitude is what brings about scandals like that. And so, and then I'd also, I'll say that I did the abortion one recently where I interviewed Kay Fellows, who's an abortion or pro-life activist, and I didn't envision that. Although I had planned it, I had started planning it out in March. Sometimes God just puts these things on my heart, and I'm like, why? But I do them anyways. And that was like that for the episode on divorce that I did with Theology Taco. In fact, that is the most popular episode uh, uh, in my podcasting career, is the one on being Christian and divorce. And I I think that has touched a lot of people. I hope it has, that it's made an impact on people. And what I wanted to do with the the with the interview with Kay Fellows was to show that it's not just old white Christian men that are pro-life, but that the pro-life movement is diverse, and it's not based on religion, but it's also based on science, and there's philosophical reasons to be pro-life. So those are all like surprising twists and turns that happened in the first year that I didn't envision at first, but that just popped up and that I decided to do. I don't think that a year ago, if you asked me if I was going to do a episode where I interview a pro-life, that I would have said, a pro-life activist. I don't know about that, because it's just too controversial. But you, you got to be bold sometimes. Boldly go where no one's gone before, I guess. And I do have plans for the upcoming year. I've already talked to one person or two people that I want to interview again. I like doing the interview ones because there's a more a relaxed feel, I think, and you don't have to hear me talking too much. You get to hear someone talking who knows what they're talking about. I feel like I do too. It's just that with that subject, they really know what they're talking about. So, and then you get to hear other perspectives too than just mine. I forgot that one of my other favorite episodes is the one that I did on the contextual theology with the Latin American perspective. I love that one so much, and Dr. Alvarez has been a big influence in my life personally. But the book that he wrote was just so eye-opening and enriching. And so I encourage you that if you haven't listened to that one, to listen to it. And it's also on my YouTube channel where you can watch us discussing it. I think it's a great, and I just graduated from seminary, and the seminary that I went to had such an emphasis on global ministry, and like over half the graduates that were able to attend, because we had COVID restrictions, over half of them were from Latin America, or were Hispanic or in Latino, and I just had a smile on my face the whole time, because it's amazing to see all the contributions from them and what they're doing in Christianity and Pentecostalism as a whole. So that was another favorite episode of mine. And so I've got plans. I wanted to do one where I'm going to be interviewing a friend who is a Pentecostal, and he has also gone down a little bit of the Reformed route. And a lot of times they can be seen as diametrically opposed to one another, just because the Reformed tradition of Christianity uh, heavily favors John Calvin, and Calvinism, and Pentecostalism, it has more of an Arminian flair when it comes to salvation, and its influence. Pentecostalism is influenced by John Wesley, who had a little bit more of a Arminian leaning, even though he was an Anglican. Uh, let me not nerd out on that part right now. So, and then I'm going to hopefully be interviewing one of my former professors about prayer, because prayer is an integral part of Christianity. It's an integral part of many religions, actually, but especially in Christianity. And there's so much combat towards prayer. Like there's so much people are combative towards prayer, and there's a lot of accusations of virtue signaling, but then those accusations become virtue signaling themselves. So anyways, we're gonna be talking about prayer, and so those are the next 2 episodes that I have planned, and then well, I'll go from there. I don't like to try to plan it too far out, but that's I think all the questions that I had. So, or the questions that were presented to me. My wife's just sitting over there, sitting down
I don't have a
on the
chair.
couch. She doesn't have a chair. She can't ask me questions.
I was asking you about the media thing. Explain the media, or why there's a change on the Facebook. Is there?
Oh, so yes, that's actually great. So my wife from the couch just asked me why. So on my Facebook page for the Theologian's Table, I changed it to the Theologian's Table Media, and that's because I'm producing my podcast, The Theologian's Table, and then I'm running the YouTube channel, which has a lot of video as well as audio, and then I'm producing her podcast as well, and I'd like to try to get a few other resources under that. So that's why I changed the Facebook page to Theologians Table Media. My wife's podcast is called Prevailing Promises, and it's a lot different than mine. Mine's more academic, and Anna's is all about person to person. So she sits down with a woman who has a story to tell other people about trials that they've been to or been through, excuse me, and how God has carried them through. And the next episode is probably that she is going to release in a few days is probably my favorite one, because the woman is still going through her difficult her trials, and so it's not always I went through this and I have victory over it now, but it's I'm going through this. I went through this. I'm still going through it, and I'm going to keep going through it. But I think that's sort of like a practical theology. My wife is an amazing podcast host, and I don't want to be too deprecating, but she's a lot better than I am. So, and on the YouTube channel, I like to, I've got those meditations out there because I think that they're really important. We're just came out of this season of anxiety, and they're meant to help you relax and focus on God, and just sort of yep. So that's why I did that. But I think this might be it, because I'm just happy that I got to be able to do this, and I'm glad that I got to do this for a creative outlet and that it helps people. I've had some people reach out to me and reach out to my wife who I didn't I had no idea that they were even listening to this. And then I've had other podcasters uh, reach out to me and say, "Hey, that was a great show." And those are people who I had listened to before I even started. So that means a lot to me too. But going forward, there's going to be lots of stuff coming up in my personal life that'll hopefully add to this podcast, and I can't wait to share with you more on this. How many times can I say podcast before? How many times do you think I say it before they get sick of it? But this is something that I love to do, and you're gonna see more creative stuff coming from here, and hopefully more people will jump on the Theologians Table Media bandwagon, because this it started out as a creative outlet for me. Yeah, okay, I admit that, but it was to serve. And the thing with Christianity is that, and theology is that you're not doing it alone. There's other people. There's other people that pour into you, and there's other people that say things better than you can say, and you collaborate, you cooperate with those people. So you're going to be hearing more from other people, more than just me, and I can't wait for you to hear them. And I thank you for being with me on this journey so far, and I hope that you continue along with me as the months and years go on, and maybe it'll blossom into something more beautiful than we can imagine. But until then, thank you for tuning in. As I always say, God bless and keep learning.